Hey everyone, I'm Don951, joined by Mekkah.
Hey, how's it going?
You're watching Part 3 Chapter 2 of my Fire Emblem 10 hard mode 0% Girls playthrough, where for plot-related reasons, the Grail Mercs get their grand reunion with many of the characters who existed in Parts 1 and 2 that I had hinted before would join the Grail Mercenaries in this chapter. So this includes Ileana, Har, Braum, Nephne, and Heather, and in addition to them, plus their inventories and skills, are the merchant NPCs that normally accompany Ileana, which would give Ike access to the armory, the vendor, and the forge. So this is the first time that Ike's team has access to an abundance of units, a full complement of useful skills, and a bounty of choice in weaponry, unlike the first two chapters in Part 3. In addition to all of these units themselves, Ike benefits from one of the greatest wealth transfers in Fire Emblem history, the greatest wealth transfer since the COVID-19 Small Business Loans Program, which many people use to defraud the US government. And among these items are the stat boosters that Ike immediately uses, which are an energy drop, a speed wings, and a secret book. The energy drop and the speed wings are critical for one boss fight in the late game, whereas the secret book is just best used on Ike ASAP because he ends up fighting a lot, and he's also one of the units who ends up using unforged weapons frequently, which means that he doesn't get a massive hit bonus that those weapons would confer to him.
This video is more about the base preparations than the actual battle because we have so much wealth now. Mostly due to the addition of the silver card. It's a one-time deal and it goes away after this base segment, so we want to make the most of it while we can. Partially we do this by forging one of each steel weapon type except for knives, and this cost is slightly reduced by us having the silver card because it cuts the base cost in half. However, the cost for the extra parameters like might and hit are still at full price, so it doesn't save that much gold. The silver card is the reason why most players will splurge here, buying things like steel poleaxes and steel great lances, but they're generally inferior to forged weapons in all parameters. So all we buy instead is a steel blade, a wind edge, a bronze axe, and an arm scroll, and most of those will not even come into play in this chapter, they'll be handy later. On top of item management, we also have a bunch of skills to hand out, and the most important one for this chapter is Celerity, courtesy of Torgot. His spirit lives on here, but keep in mind we also now have access to much more powerful skills like Pass and Resolve. At the end of the base segment, the silver card vanishes, so we make sure to sell that for a bit of extra gold, and then the chapter, which is much less complicated than the preparations, can finally begin.
The main objective of this chapter is a very simple kill boss, and the boss helps out with this by being mobile and being a Dragon Master, which means that he's unaffected by the terrain that's in the southeast corner of the map where he starts. So all we need to do is to place a unit with 2 range in the corner of his attack range and make sure that he can one-round him. And the best candidate for this is Shannon. Otherwise, pretty much everything else that we're doing is self-improvement on a handful of units. There are a couple of side objectives that are possible in this chapter, like conceivable, but realistically they are way too far away for us to get. Things like stealing a statue frag off of a bishop within the boss's range, or I think in casual play, a lot of players try to go for the bolting tome in the top right corner of the map. This one would require your Heather to have gained like 5 points of strength, so it's also like entirely unrealistic. There are even 2 hidden coins that are just too far away to be worth going after. So most of our effort is used on training units, and there are 5 units in particular whom we really want to get to tier 3 by part 4, or sooner if at all possible. They are Titania, Har, Oscar, Mia, and Shinon. Titania and Har are very obvious candidates. They start with a pretty high base level, and they also start with pretty high stats, and so getting them to tier 3 probably wouldn't be too difficult. In fact, Titania with a short axe is just mauling a whole bunch of paladins right here. But the other 3 units that I mentioned take a little bit more effort to reach that benchmark.
The training regimen works out such that 3 of these units have to make it to level 21 in order to promote, since the Master Crowns are so rare. And that is unreliable just due to the sheer amount of combat that they have to do. Something is bound to go wrong. And it's only going to get worse as the game goes on, and these units don't grow while the enemies do, so they'll have trouble doubling or even dealing meaningful damage. So optimizing grinding is very difficult. In addition, biorhythm can make this worse. Oscar, for example, in this chapter is on low biorhythm, and so he's prone to accidental misses. What also doesn't help is that the boss is one of the first enemies to move, and so we don't have turn to enemy phase to grind a lot of extra kills for our units. Shinon can kill him, but he does need a critical hit with his shiny new steel bow forge that we put a bunch of crit on, just like with the steel sword. Shinon having Adept greatly increases his chances of killing the boss, Either he can get a double Adept proc to kill him without any crits, or a single Adept proc can give him an extra chance to get that critical hit. When he does, that finishes chapter 3-2 in 2 turns. We will see you next time.
Later.